the glove that was found in a field that was similar to the glove in the Nancy Guthrie kidnapping. The results are in, and there is no DNA hit in the CODIS system. The CODIS system is the FBI's file of 57 million people, most of whom have had criminal records, and at least for that, no hit. So a setback, but it's not over because there are other ways that that DNA can be tested using something that many of us have used in the past.
Right. That we have used in the past. Oh, a PCR test.
No. I'm talking about genealogy.
The man who took Nancy Guthrie covered his face. He wore gloves. He disconnected the camera. He did almost everything right. But he bought his equipment at Walmart. And Walmart has cameras. Walmart has purchase records. Walmart has corporate security teams that are now working directly with the FBI. And every transaction made in a Walmart store, whether by card, by cash, in person, or online, leaves a trace. Tonight, we are going to follow that trace. From the doorbell footage that investigators almost lost, through the backpack, the holster, the mask, the gloves, and the clothing, piece by piece, into the retail records, the surveillance systems, and the investigative techniques that have cracked cases exactly like this one before. Because while the public has been focused on the ransom notes and the DNA, all investigators have been quietly building something else entirely: a purchase history, a paper trail, and possibly a face without a mask. On February 10th, the FBI released 4 black and white images and 2 video clips recovered from the back-end systems of Nancy Guthrie's Nest doorbell camera. The suspect had attempted to destroy the device. He failed, and the images that survived are now the foundation of an investigation that has engaged more than 400 law enforcement personnel. The footage shows a figure on Nancy Guthrie's front porch, male, approximately 5'9" to 5'10", average build, ski mask, dark zip-up jacket, long pants, gloves, a backpack on his back, and a handgun in a holster positioned near his waist. In one clip, he approaches the front door and raises a gloved hand toward the camera before turning away. Or in a separate clip, he faces the camera with what appears to be a flashlight held in his mouth, then covers the lens with vegetation. Now most of the public attention on this footage has been focused on the mask, the gun, and the body language. That makes sense. Those are the dramatic elements. But investigators were looking at something else entirely. They were looking at what he was wearing, not because they cared about his fashion choices, but because every item on his body is a product. Every product has a manufacturer. Every manufacturer has a retail chain, and every retail chain has records. The first item they identified was the backpack, a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack. And that identification broke this case open in a way that nothing else has. That Ozark Trail is a private label brand manufactured exclusively for Walmart. It is not sold at Target. It is not sold on Amazon. It is not available at sporting goods stores or surplus outlets or anywhere else. If you own an Ozark Trail product, you got it from Walmart. Period. There is no other source. That exclusivity is devastating for the suspect, because it means that every single unit of that backpack ever sold exists in Walmart's transaction database. Every sale has a timestamp. Every sale has a store location. And depending on how the buyer paid, every sale can potentially be traced back to a name. Walmart has already turned over those records to investigators. Purchase data for every Ozark Trail hiker pack sold over the past several months, not just in Tucson, but across surrounding regions. In-store purchases, online orders. At every transaction. Now investigators are working through that data. How many were sold in the last 30 days, the last 60 days? Whether any were purchased with a credit card or debit card that can be traced. Whether any were purchased alongside other items that match the suspect's outfit. And whether any of those purchases were captured on Walmart's internal surveillance cameras. Because Walmart's camera system is extensive. Entrances, exits, every register, most aisles, the parking lot. If the suspect walked into a Walmart and bought that backpack, there is a very high probability that his face, without a mask, was recorded. But it was not just the backpack. Investigators believe the clothing and face mask were also purchased at Walmart. The jacket, the pants, the gloves, the ski mask. The working hypothesis is that the suspect made a single trip to outfit himself for this crime. One store, one visit, one set of cameras. Now the clothing items are not exclusive to Walmart the way the backpack is. You can buy a dark jacket or a ski mask at dozens of retailers. Investigators have been careful to note that the Walmart connection for the clothing remains a possibility, not a certainty. But the logic is straightforward. If you already know the backpack came from Walmart, and the clothing is consistent with products Walmart sells, the most likely scenario is that everything came from the same place. And if investigators can identify the exact brands of the clothing items, they can cross-reference. Nay, a customer who bought an Ozark Trail hiker pack and a specific model of ski mask and a specific pair of black gloves within the same transaction, that person becomes the center of this investigation immediately. Now, here is where this gets really interesting. Because there is another item in the footage that most people have overlooked, and it might be more valuable than the backpack. The holster. The suspect is wearing a gun holster visible near his waist, and it has been identified as consistent with a product sold at select Walmart stores for approximately $10. A strategy brand, large frame revolver hip holster, water resistant. Designed for a revolver with a 4 to 6.5 inch barrel, right-hand use. But the gun he is carrying does not appear to be a revolver. It resembles a Walther semi-automatic or something similar. That is an unusual combination, a revolver holster for a semi-automatic pistol. It is not a pairing that anyone with firearms experience would choose, but it is exactly the kind of mistake someone would make if they walked into a Walmart, grabbed the cheapest holster on the shelf without understanding what it was designed for, and used it because they had nothing else. This tells investigators two things. First, this is not a professional. The gun handling in the footage has already been assessed as amateurish. The holster confirms it. This is someone who acquired a weapon and a plan, but lacked the competence to execute either one properly. Second, and this is the part that matters most, far fewer people buy that $10 holster than buy the backpack. If investigators can cross-reference holster purchases with backpack purchases at the same store or within the same time window, they are no longer looking at hundreds of transactions. They are looking at a handful. It may be less. And the FBI is already working that angle from the other direction. Agents have been canvassing gun stores across the Tucson area, walking in with the doorbell footage and asking whether anyone recognizes the suspect, the weapon, or the holster. One gun store owner confirmed publicly that the FBI showed him a list of 18 to 24 names with photographs and asked him to check those individuals against his sales records. 18 to 24 names. Think about that. You do not walk into a gun store with that many names and photographs unless you have already generated a working list of persons of interest through other investigative channels. Purchase records, DNA, tips, surveillance. Something has already produced those names. The gun store canvas is an attempt to add another data point to an existing profile. The sheriff has publicly denied narrowing the investigation to a specific group, but the gun store owner's account tells a different story. Investigators have names. They are checking those names against every available record, and the retail trail is one of the primary sources feeding that list. Before we go further, there is a technical detail about the footage that needs to be addressed, because it affects how every item on the suspect is being analyzed. The doorbell camera was operating in infrared mode. That is standard for Nest cameras at night, and infrared changes how materials appear on screen. Dark objects can look light. Black fabric can appear gray or even white depending on its composition. The suspect's ski mask appears lighter in the footage than it actually is. Investigators have confirmed it is believed to be black. The different shades visible in the image are caused by the mask's materials reflecting infrared light differently, not by the mask being multiple colors. The same applies to the holster. What looks like a light-colored or multicolored holster in the footage is likely a single dark-colored item distorted by infrared. This matters because the public has been trying to identify the suspect's gear based on how it looks in the footage. And many of those identifications are wrong. Investigators are working with a completely different understanding of what these items actually look like in natural light. They are deconstructing each item through the physics of infrared imaging, then matching backward to the actual products. That is a level of forensic analysis that the public does not have access to. And there is one more detail from the footage that almost no one has discussed yet. There may be a ring on the suspect's hand. The sheriff noted in an interview that the images appear to show the suspect wearing a ring underneath his glove. The forensic team is now analyzing the footage to determine whether that is correct. If it is, that changes things significantly. A ring is one of the hardest things to disguise. You can change your clothes, you can shave your head. You can move to a different city, but if you wear a ring every day, the people around you know it. Your coworkers know it. The cashier at the gas station you visit every morning knows it. It shows up in photographs, it shows up on video, and it shows up in the memories of anyone who has ever shaken your hand. A distinctive ring, confirmed in the footage, would give investigators something they can show to every person who submits a tip, not just a height and a build, a specific piece of jewelry that someone, somewhere, has seen before. Now, for anyone wondering whether the retail approach actually works, whether tracing products through purchase records can actually identify a suspect, we do not need to speculate, because the FBI proved it works less than 2 months ago. On December 4th, 2025, the FBI arrested Brian Cole Jr. for placing 2 pipe bombs outside the Republican and Democratic National Committee headquarters in Washington, D.C. The case had been unsolved for nearly 5 years. 39,000 video files reviewed, more than 1,000 interviews conducted, over 600 tips received. None of it produced an arrest. What produced the arrest was purchase records. The FBI subpoenaed hardware stores and box retailers for transactions matching the components used in the bombs: galvanized pipes, end caps, 9-volt batteries, kitchen timers, electrical wire. They tracked 233,000 individual purchases of a single type of end cap. They subpoenaed sneaker retailers because they had identified the suspect's shoes from surveillance footage. Then they cross-referenced. And purchase records against cell phone tower, data against license plate, reader records against physical descriptions. And somewhere in the intersection of all that data, Brian Cole Jr. appeared. He had bought the components from retailers including Home Depot and Walmart. His phone had been near the scene. His car had been captured on a plate reader. The evidence had been sitting in FBI databases for years. It just had not been connected. The parallels to the Guthrie case are impossible to ignore. A suspect captured on surveillance footage, identifiable products traced to specific retailers, purchase records subpoenaed and cross-referenced against other evidence. The methodology is identical. The FBI knows it works because they just used it. The only difference is timing. In the Cole case, it took 5 years to connect the dots. In the Guthrie case, the evidence is being generated in real time. The question is whether investigators can move faster. Now, we need to talk about the DNA, because the situation is more complicated than most coverage has acknowledged. There are at least 2 distinct sets of unknown DNA in this investigation, and they do not match each other. The first was recovered from a glove found approximately 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home, in a field near the side of a road. The FBI confirmed the glove appears to visually match those worn by the suspect in the doorbell footage. Testing revealed a DNA profile from an unknown male. That profile was submitted to CODIS, the FBI's national database of more than 26 million profiles. No match. The second set of DNA was recovered from Nancy Guthrie's property. It does not belong to Nancy. Yes, it does not belong to anyone in close contact with her. And critically, it does not match the DNA found on the glove. 2 locations, 2 unknown male DNA profiles. No match to each other, no match to anyone in the system. There are several possible explanations, and none of them are simple. The glove may not belong to the suspect. 16 gloves were recovered during the search, and most belong to the searchers themselves. The FBI has emphasized that the connection between the glove and the footage is based on visual similarity, not confirmed forensic linkage. The DNA at the property could belong to someone unrelated to the crime entirely: a repairman, a contractor, a visitor from weeks or months before. Homes accumulate DNA from many sources over time, or there may have been more than one person involved. The ransom tipster who contacted TMZ used the phrase, "the main individual." Not the kidnapper, not the person, the main individual. That phrasing implies others. If a second person was present, 2 different DNA profiles at 2 different locations becomes consistent with that theory. The sheriff has indicated that the DNA at the property may actually be more significant than the glove DNA. He believes investigators may have the suspect's DNA from inside the home, but it needs to be separated, sorted, and tested further before that can be confirmed. The glove DNA is now being submitted for investigative genetic genealogy. This is the same technique that identified Brian Kohberger in the Idaho College murders. It involves uploading the DNA profile to publicly accessible genealogy databases and searching for familial matches that can be traced backward through a family tree to a specific individual. But there is a limitation that could slow this down significantly. The three largest consumer DNA databases, 23andMe, MyHeritage, and Ancestry DNA, have collectively tested more than 50 million people. All three have barred law enforcement from accessing their records. Investigators are limited to smaller opt-in databases like GED Match, Family Tree DNA, and DNA Justice, which together contain fewer than 2 million profiles. One of the nation's leading genetic genealogists stated publicly that if she were the Guthrie family, she would be asking those major databases to make an exception. Whether they will is an open question. That's while the retail and DNA investigations continue, a completely separate technological effort is underway to try to locate Nancy Guthrie herself. Starting on February 3rd, a company called Parsons Corporation deployed its Bluefly technology to assist the search. Bluefly is a Bluetooth and Wi-Fi sensor designed for search and rescue operations. It weighs less than a pound and has a detection range of about 218 yards. It was mounted on the Sheriff's Department helicopter and later deployed on ground vehicles and on foot. Its purpose is to scan for signals emitted by Nancy's pacemaker. Modern pacemakers emit low-energy Bluetooth signals. These signals are short-range, designed to communicate with a nearby smartphone for monitoring purposes. The fact that Nancy's pacemaker app disconnected from her phone at 2:28 in the morning does not mean the pacemaker stopped working. Pacemakers are designed to function independently. If the device is still active and Nancy is within range, Bluefly could theoretically detect its signal. The challenge is that the Tucson desert is full of Bluetooth-emitting devices, smart thermostats, fitness trackers, earbuds, air tags. Every one of those produces a signal that Bluefly picks up. Investigators have to scan, identify, and eliminate every signal until they either find the one associated with Nancy's pacemaker or exhaust the search area. A cybersecurity expert and the CEO of the National Center for Open and Unsolved Cases have developed a new prototype drone-mounted detection device specifically for this case. The FBI has the prototype and may begin deploying it in the coming days. The expert described the pacemaker as potentially the most unbiased witness in the case because it generates telemetry data that exists independent of human interpretation. If that data can be recovered, it could reveal not just where Nancy is, but a timeline of what happened to her after the camera went dark. On February 15th, a source inside the investigation said something that shifted the direction of the public narrative entirely. Investigators believe this was a burglary gone wrong. Multiple experts who reviewed the doorbell footage independently reached the same conclusion. The behavior captured on camera, the equipment used, the apparent lack of planning, none of it pointed to a premeditated kidnapping. If someone entered Nancy's home intending to steal and encountered her unexpectedly, the situation would have escalated in seconds. An armed burglar confronted by a resident has a choice: leave and risk identification, or take the witness. If this theory is correct, it would explain almost everything that has not made sense under the kidnapping narrative. The ransom notes may not have come from the person who took Nancy at all. They could be the work of an opportunist who heard about the disappearance and tried to profit from it. The medication left on the counter makes sense. A burglar would have no reason to think about the victim's heart medication. That thought would not occur to someone whose plan never included a hostage. The amateur characteristics in the footage make sense. An experienced kidnapper would not buy their gear at Walmart, use a revolver holster for a semi-automatic, or spend 41 minutes at the scene. But an inexperienced burglar who suddenly found himself in a situation he never planned for might do exactly that. And the source said something else. There is a widespread belief among investigators that Nancy could be alive. That changes everything. If this is a rescue operation and not just a homicide investigation, every hour matters. Every lead takes on added urgency. And the retail trail, the DNA analysis, and the pacemaker search all become not just efforts to solve a crime, but efforts to save a life. On February 17th, the sheriff formally and publicly cleared the entire Guthrie family as suspects. All siblings, all spouses, everyone. This was not a political gesture. And clearing family members publicly in an active investigation is a significant decision. It means investigators have reviewed the evidence, the alibis, the phone records, and every other data point for each family member, and concluded definitively that none of them were involved in an investigation where the sheriff had previously said that everybody was still a suspect. Removing the family entirely signals a fundamental shift. The evidence has pointed investigators in a different direction. And the online speculation that targeted family members, the armchair detectives who built entire theories around people they had never met based on nothing but proximity, those accusations were not just wrong, they were cruel, and the sheriff said so publicly. So where does this leave us? 400 investigators, 50,000 tips. At multiple DNA samples in various stages of analysis. Purchase records from one of the largest retailers in the world. Gun store canvases with names and photographs. Pacemaker detection drones scanning the Arizona desert. Genealogy databases being searched for familial matches. And a suspect who thought a ski mask and a pair of gloves would be enough to disappear. There is a confirmed Walmart-exclusive backpack with full purchase records now in the hands of the FBI. There is a $10 holster with distinctive characteristics that narrows the field even further. There is clothing that may have been purchased at the same store in the same trip. There is DNA from 2 locations, both belonging to unknown males, both now being tested through every available database. There is a possible ring visible under the suspect's glove. And there is a law enforcement source telling reporters that Nancy Guthrie could still be alive. The man who took Nancy Guthrie thought he was invisible. He covered his face. He wore gloves. He killed the camera. But he did not think about the receipt. He did not think about the fact that his backpack was sold by one store in the entire country. He did not think about the holster that does not match his gun. He did not think about the ring that might be visible through his glove. He did not think about the DNA he left on a road 2 miles from the scene. And he did not think about what happens when Walmart, the FBI, 400 investigators, and 50,000 tips all converge on the same set of transactions. Someone walked into a store. They bought a backpack, possibly a holster, possibly a mask, possibly gloves. They paid for those items somehow, and somewhere in Walmart's systems, that transaction exists. Finding it is a matter of time. If you purchased an Ozark Trail hiker pack at a Walmart in the Tucson area in December or January, or if you know someone who did, investigators need to hear from you. The FBI tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI. The Pima County Sheriff's Department can be reached at 520-351-4900. There is a $100,000 reward. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 18 days. She has a pacemaker. She needs her medication. And somewhere in the Arizona desert, 400 people are trying to bring her home. This story is not over. This is part 2 of an ongoing series. If you have not seen part 1, the link is in the description. Subscribe and turn on notifications. When there is a break in this case, the next video will be ready.